Hi, and today I'm going to have a little bit of a Monday moan and discuss the extent to which Blizzard are listening to feedback and responding to feedback, or, if I'm going to be honest, more specifically, the extent to which they are not responding to feedback. So, the official forums. Have you ever seen a more wretched hive of scum and villainy? Specifically, the Battle for Azeroth beta forums, and even more specifically, the items and classes forums. Now, if the official forums are a lunatic asylum, then the beta forums are Arkham. This is the place where you will find the wildest, most ridiculous comments being made. And someone directed me towards one as a Ret Paladin. You know, obviously I've been taking a bit of interest in this. I've been on these forums much less than I was during Legion, and there is a reason for this, which again hit me as soon as I went onto here. I mean, I'm looking down here, you know, and I went across, and compared to Legion, there's just almost no responses from developers. Now, I'm not talking about developers responding to every post, because that's the sort of thing they tend to say. Like a good Sith, they deal in absolutes, and they will say, well, we can't respond to every post, as if the choice is you respond to every post or you respond to none of them. In fact, just to run a few numbers here, I was a bit sad and I went through every page here. They seem to cut it off after a certain amount of time. It only goes back a month. There's 19 pages. In reality, it's 18 and a bit pages. And altogether, there were 15 posts which have had a blue response. Now, some of those posts, of course, may have had a few blue responses, but nonetheless, 15 posts. And just quickly going through the classes that have received a response. So there was a Discipline Priest post that received a response, an Affliction Warlock one, a Holy Paladin, two Holy Paladin posts have received a blue response, Beastmaster Hunter, Fury Warrior, Mistweaver Monk, Protection Paladin, Balanced Druid, Protection Warrior, Unholy DK, Restoration Shaman, Arcane Mage. There was a general post which wasn't class specific that got a blue response, and there was a general Druid post that also got one. It was the one to do with travel form, about non-consensual travelling on the travel form. Me Too has arrived for the Druids. Fair enough, that got a response. But that's it. If I didn't mention your spec there, that means that no post that's been produced on that spec has had a blue response. Some classes have been completely absent. In fact, rogues are not there at all, at least in the last month. Again, this is covering a month here, about 19 pages. I mean, what does that mean for rogues? Do they know what's going on? Come to think of it, do rogues ever know what's going on? But the point is, people will, you know, often defend this and go, but you know, they don't have that much time. They've got to be doing their normal work and stuff like that. But let's just break it down now. There's about a dozen class designers and 15 posts. So if we assume that all of those 15 posts, well, they can't have all been by different people because there's only about 12, unless, of course, Watcher was one of them, some more senior people outside of the class design team, but nonetheless with an overview were responding as well. And that's like an average of 1 and a bit posts over the whole month. Now, bearing in mind, yes, of course, they can't read every single one. They can't read every single thread and the full threads as well. But in actual fact, would it be so onerous for something where there should be a lot of feedback with the class, for each class designer to spend half an hour looking at the forum? Because apart from anything else, they wouldn't even have to check every post. They only need to check the posts that are for the class that they're working on. These class designers have, you know, particular specs that they're given to work on. So they could just pick those ones out. And in fact, they don't even have to do that. I mean, there are community managers, and we are told that the community managers read through every single post. We have no reason to doubt that at all. We also know that they don't just do it to make sure we behave ourselves. Not that we really do, but at least there is some semblance of order and basic civility on the forums. But they also send off any interesting ones. They flag it up to the developers. That's what we're told. Do we really believe that now? I mean, are we going to say that in a month there were only 15 posts that had anything interest to be worthwhile a designer actually responding to it? The amount of time it would take to do that is minimal. If you think about the amount of time it would take just to read the posts on the specs or classes that designer's working on, that is much less time than I spend reading through comments on my channel. And this is a hobby. It's not even my main hobby. And I have to go on about this several times as well to do with feedback, because it's in Legion there was actually responses, there were a number of responses to things. Often didn't like what was said back, reading the blue posts. Sometimes I was rolling my eyes, sure, but at least those responses were there. I even triggered Celestial when I called him out on his nonsense one time, but the response was there. People were taking the time. What's changed since then? Why is it that the class designers are not really engaging properly with the community? Now, that's not to say that those designers are not saying anything. They are having private conversations with the senior theory crafters. I mean, I'm able to report on that, for example, on my channel for Retribution Paladins. There may be others who are able to do similar things for other specs, but I don't believe that there are people able to do that for all of those specs. For example, I mean, someone in the chat tell me, if you are a rogue and you're trying to keep tabs on exactly what's going on with rogues, what have you got to go on? Have you got anyone who's talking to designers and is able to feedback? Or are you just going on the multitude of nonsense videos that people are posting all the time because they've got into beta, they get themselves a character, they smash their head on a training dummy and go, oh yeah, there's this ability. And the usual things. I mean, I know for my spec, and I can't believe it's not the same for every other spec as well. You've got people proudly proclaiming, "Oh, this talent is useless," when it's actually BIS, and physical, a physical damage dealing ability is much better than a spell damage ability. So you've got this nonsense, and you look at some of the posts where there is a blue response as well, and it's always very, very different once the blue has responded. Because people are then on their best behaviours. And obviously, because as soon as, a blue has responded to a post, it's the same behaviour. Everyone gets into it, they see what they've said, and then they want to say something else in the hope that their concerns or whatever they want to say will be responded to as well. They also think it's a bit like the old street lamp in a darkened street, in that there's a greater chance that dev will read what they've said. Even though, as I say, we're told that community managers read everything and highlight interesting ones to the designers. But I have my doubts about that, given that we've had so little feedback in this alpha sequence. And even though, as I've said, that's just going back over a month, I've been, on looking at the forums every now and then since I got into alpha, which is like the second week or something, third week maybe. And every time I've gone on, it's really been very little. And I know there's been no responses to my particular spec as well in all that time. So you have no feedback. You've got no evidence that anything has been responded to. But even if they weren't, even if they just had the attitude, you know what, everyone is just a moron of the highest order, we can't be dealing with them, there should at least be some feedback that at least clarifies a few things, or for each spec on a regular basis. I'm not saying all the time, because sometimes a spec, nothing changes with that spec for a few weeks. But when it does, just a few little clarification things, would that be too big a deal? No, take you half an hour. And what that would avoid is complete nonsense being talked about. Because if anyone says something that's just complete gibberish, someone else can point to the blue response that said, no, it's like this. And they're just... But in the end, what you end up getting is just this nonsense, except where you do have a blue response. Like I say, people behave themselves a bit better because they want to engage now in a sensible discussion. Most people even use coherent sentences at this point. Whereas when that doesn't happen, you just use... The only posts that actually get any decent number of responses are usually when it's the same two people, arguing, going backwards and forwards with their own brand of nonsense. But it's a different brand of nonsense to each other. So, hence the endless back and forth there. And the result is that anyone who wants to have a sensible discussion will take one look at these and think, oh, what's the point? Why bother? Because that's another thing. Even if a blue just went on, every few days and just said, bloody hell. What the hell was that? I'll have to check the news tonight, see what that was. But, sorry, I've lost my train of thought completely. Yes, so if, there was a response every few days, then at the very least, what could happen is you could get people, they know that they're responding. They're going to have more sensible discussions, and in the hope that in the next few days it's their post that's responded to as well, and you'll get much more fruitful discourse. You'll get more sensible people going on it as well, hopefully drowning out the boneheads that are just doing a seesaw effect as well. But we're not getting it, and as I say, it is markedly. I've never really felt that the feedback was good from Blizzard, but it's far, far worse in this expansion than it has been before. And bear in mind, of course, I'm only talking about the classed ones there. There are other forums as well, and maybe some of those forums also have had some responses. I don't know. I've not been looking at that one today. But, of course, that would be different employees working on anyway, different developers. I'm talking specifically about the class designers, for which there is, as I say, an average of about one and a bit posts per developer over the last month, which I just don't think is good enough. But anyway, those are my thoughts. You tell me what you think. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share for further content. And Azeroth review will be on tomorrow, assuming you watch this as soon as I put it up. Otherwise, if you're watching it tomorrow, it'll be on today. And if you're watching it the day after, it was on yesterday. But there'll be another one next week, don't worry. So thanks very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.